Representative Hoops.
Yes.
Representative Isaacson.
No.
Representative Polsek.
Good morning. Today is May 30th, 2024. The hands of the government of the state of Ohio are in the hands of the people, and the House is in session. Today, at the request of the governor of the state of Ohio, Mike DeWine, the House is in emergency session, bringing forth a request to put Biden on the ballot. But what is the key issue here today? The DNC seeks to have a committee in 77 days before the election in an attempt to nominate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as president. The issue with this here is, pursuant to the state of Ohio, we require 90 days notice in order to do this. How will the House of the people address this issue? The Senate seems willing, but will the House? Today we'll get a better understanding, and you will hear from our National Outreach Director, James Lawrence, on this matter. We hope you can understand a better part of the process of this governance and civics here today. I hope you enjoy this wonderful event.
Putting him on the ballot through the conventional mechanism, I have said all along, my own view is that Republicans screamed foul for months when Colorado tried to bar Trump from the ballot on some technicality. And so we would look like hypocrites if we were to deny Biden a place on the ballot due to some similar technicality that, you know, most people don't care about.
Guests of Representative Melanie Miller, we have Aidan Haggard, John Keim, and James Lawrence representing the American Conservative Youth Union. Please rise, receive a welcome from the House.
Hello, well, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
No problem, thank you. Can you explain a little bit more in detail the Biden ballot blunder, as we're calling it, and that whole situation?
Sure. So the reason we are here this week is our Governor DeWine called for a special session for the legislature to address two particular issues. The first issue was the foreign money ban from ballot initiative, citizen-led ballot initiatives here in the state of Ohio. We saw last year in Ohio where we had two ballot initiatives that most of the money that came in for those initiatives were from foreign countries. And we don't think it's fair in Ohio that people that do not have live here in the great state of Ohio or live in our soil should have their hand on the scale to tip and weigh those initiatives. So one was to address the foreign money situation in Ohio, and then the second one was to address it wasn't specifically President Biden, but to make sure that the party has a candidate on the ballot. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party missed the deadline for President Biden to be on Ohio's ballot based on our law and our deadlines. And so the legislature, the governor called for the legislature to take action to override and change the law so that the party could have a candidate on the ballot. However, the legislature is not needed to do this. The party can do that on their own by appointing someone earlier, but because their convention is long after the deadline, that's why the governor was encouraging the legislature, not even so much encouraging, but pushing the legislature to act swiftly so that Ohioans have the ability to have two candidates on the ballot for president.
So we've seen both parties kind of pointing fingers at, oh, it's this person or that person. Do you have, what is your opinion on whose fault this is that he's not on the ballot in Ohio?
That's a good question. I think the law is very clear in Ohio, and so there are rules, there are laws. Just like any candidate running for office, you have to follow rules and regulations in order to be fairly on the ballot. So I believe somebody must have just maybe didn't do their homework or missed those deadlines from the Democratic Party, but it's not about pointing fingers. This is about Ohioans having an opportunity to have a fair election where they have two candidates on the ballot. So sometimes, as you probably have heard in the session today, that the legislature has had to come together in previous years to do that for the Republicans and the Democrats. And so it's just a matter of I'm not sure what exactly happened. Obviously, the Democratic Party, it was their responsibility to help with those deadlines. Each state has different rules. Ours are So many days before an election, I believe the number is 90, and this bill, I think, changed that to 65. Don't quote me on that. But there's a reason why, because the Secretary of State has to follow the legislature with printing the ballots and making sure the men and women that are serving overseas can also participate in our elections, and those can be printed in the correct amount of time, and that the way our local board of elections can prepare for our election.
So with this coming down to almost the final deadline, with us having a special session, what was preventing us from doing this earlier, or possibly like a month ago?
That's a great question. Well, the Ohio House had an opportunity 2 times in the month of May to vote on these issues during our regularly scheduled session. We had 2 sessions in May. The Ohio Senate had provided other bills for us to vote on, but all of the bills are at the pleasure of the Speaker of the House to bring to the floor. So the legislature in the House cannot vote on a bill unless it's brought to the floor for a vote. And again, that's at the pleasure of the Speaker. So it was not brought to the floor. I do believe we had the votes to pass this with different Senate amendments that were sent to our chamber, but for whatever reason, it didn't get done, and so the governor slapped us on the hand and said, I need the Ohio House to get their act together and take care of this to address these 2 particular issues. And so part of the rule, actually this is the second time since 2004 that we've been called to a special session. It happened in 2004 under Governor Taft, and I believe it dealt with campaign finance law. And so this is very unique. So the only issues we are allowed to hear during this special session are the 2 issues that the governor had addressed in his press release and what he issued to the chambers.
Yeah. So before this vote took place, the DNC was planning to nominate Biden through the video conference.
Correct.
Did you have an opinion on that? And do you think they will continue to do that even though this the ballot registration has been changed?
Sure. The reality is the Democrats did not need the Ohio legislature to put Biden on the ballot. That's what it comes down to. They had an avenue to do that, and if you heard special session this week from the Ohio Senate, you would have heard members in the minority caucus state very clearly they don't want Republicans to try to fix their problem. They didn't want us to do this, and so it's sort of a tough situation. Originally, this bill was a bill that had the foreign money and the Biden ballot piece in one, and it covers both parties. Both the Republicans and Democrats have to compromise, because a lot of Republicans don't want to vote for a Democrat, and yet the Democrats don't want to ban foreign money in Ohio. So you kind of have to weigh the scale a little bit on both of these issues, but I do believe that the Democrat National Convention, they would have been able to put, and they are planning to put Biden on the ballot, whether the legislature passed this bill or not.
So when we look at the state law with the 90 days, how do we balance following the state law but also allowing the citizens to choose their own candidate?
Well, the law that we passed today is a temporary fix just for this year. And so this will, going back to the previous years, as you heard the members on the House kind of wanting there to be an amendment so that this can be a permanent fix. The law is in place for a reason. So we need to follow the law, and as lawmakers, that's what we do. So the only way we can change the law is if the Ohio House and the Senate choose to do that. But for time purposes, because the deadlines are fast approaching, there was a temporary fix for this year just to take care of that, because we do need to make sure that the local board of elections, and that's why I felt today we tabled that amendment, because this is a conversation that the Secretary of State needs to be brought to the table, the local board of elections need to be brought to the table, because 30 days before an election is not enough time. We need to make sure that there's enough time for these entities to be able to prepare the ballots, get instructions out to the voters, and so forth. So those conversations, I think the best case scenario is to have those conversations with those individuals that it's going to impact directly, so that there's time to notify people like you and I who are going to be voting, so that they have the information they need to have to make an informed decision and get registered or know where they can vote.
Okay. So now we're going to go back to the abortion issue of in November 2023. What do you think the biggest failure with that was? Either the way it was presented or, the way it was written?
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of things to consider with the abortion amendment that passed in Ohio. I think there are a lot of issues. I don't think there was one particular thing. I think there was a lot of confusion. One of the things that we're trying to do in the legislature is, if you notice, we had 2 issue 1s within a few months of each other. I think that provided a lot of confusion to Ohioans, not knowing which issue was issue 1. Was it the changing the threshold of the Constitution, making it difficult to change our Constitution, or was it the abortion amendment? I think that was really confusing for voters. We also had a lot of foreign money that, again, I really felt tipped the scale in Ohio, but also I think the abortion issue is a hard issue. Roe versus Wade, that legislation, abortion's been legal on demand in America for nearly 50 years. This is a hard issue. Just by changing the law, people can still, it's not going to change what people's hearts are about the abortion issue when to me, it's a moral absolute. One of the reasons I'm here in the legislature is I do believe in the sanctity of human life. I believe life begins at conception. Outside of the legislature, I am a director of a faith-based pregnancy care center. I've been in my role for 9.5 years, and so to the core of who I am is protecting and defending our most vulnerable citizens, and those are the children that are not yet born and do not have a voice. So I think there are a lot of things about this abortion ballot initiative. I think one of the big things when we look at the research to see where we failed as Ohioans is the church. The church got involved too late. The church got involved too late. When we look at the stats show us that 1 out of 3 Christians who are attending church weekly, 4 times a month, voted yes on the abortion amendment. So I think we need to start having more conversations about this issue. It's going to take time to move the needle for people to think about life differently. I'm envisioning and praying and believing for a state where abortion is unthinkable and that the sanctity of life is celebrated, that it's not even a thought, that adoption plan would be an option. When we look at ways that we support moms and families that are having a child, we need to find ways that we support them in this state. So I think it's we're kind of in a regrouping state in Ohio to see what we can do to continue to be family friendly and continue to be welcoming for families to want to raise a family, to work here, to play here, and to call Ohio home.
So in that, you mentioned that foreign money played an aspect. Do you think that foreign money should be completely banned from Ohio elections?
I do. I absolutely do. And that's exactly what we voted on today in the special session, because if people who do not live or are not United States citizens, they should not be voting in our elections, period. That's it. That's not fair to Ohioans. So no, I absolutely do agree that we should ban foreign money having an influence on our elections in Ohio and in our country, quite honestly.
And so for our final question, do you think that this bill, House Bill 2?
House Bill 1.
House Bill 1,
yes,
sorry.
it's okay.
Would have affected the abortion issue and banned that foreign money that was used?
It's hard to say. I think it certainly would have impacted the outreach of that initiative for sure, because if you look at the numbers, there was a Swiss billionaire that gave, I think it was 12 or 15 million in Ohio. And so, money and elections do go hand in hand, because it costs money to reach people, to get your message across, to do radio, to do television, to do mail pieces. It costs money to run an election or to run a campaign. Not necessarily having the most money wins, but it's obviously very effective. And so on the other side, we didn't have that type of money coming in for that initiative. So I do think that it could have changed, but maybe not. It's kind of in hindsight at this point. We can only learn from it moving forward and do better next time.
Well, I'd like to thank you for sitting down and talking to us
You're
and spending some
welcome.
time.
Thank you for coming to the State House.
No problem. Thank you. Today we got to sit in on the House Oversight Committee where we talked about House Bill 1 and House Bill 2. We got to hear comments from Representative Isaacson on the Democratic side, and that he opposes House Bill 1, which bans foreign money, and supports House Bill 2, which would put Biden on the ballot in Ohio. We We also got to hear comments from Representative Seitz, who supported both of these bills. Then we got to sit in on a House hearing where where both sides of the party discussed these topics further. We would like to say a special thank you to Representative Melanie Miller, who made her our distinguished guest at the House session today, and for sitting down to interview with us.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Melanie. Today we've seen the significance of our participation in government. Today we're back finally at our headquarters here in Ashland, Ohio. The power of government in the state of Ohio is in the hands of its people. And it is only those who are able to play a part in it that truly get to say what does and does not go on in our state. Through our participation in our civics and governance process, we are able to understand, participate, and more importantly, have an effect on our governance process. It is times like this that we must identify common sense conservatives and elect them to public office. Here at the American Conservative Youth Union, we create the next generation of conservative statesmen who will be the next president, the next Supreme Court justice, who will be the next senator, and more to come. I'm Aiden Haggard with the American Conservative Youth Union, president and founder.